Welcome to another episode of Jamming with Jason. Had to get the little higher point in my voice this time. I don't know why, but there you go. Well, hey, today is going to be an exciting episode. It is kind of a blast from the past. And when we get talking, you're going to kind of understand why. But just like any episode, right, the fact that you're listening to this right now means that there is something in today's episode that you need to hear. And it also probably means that there's something that others that you know need to hear as well. So make sure, whatever you do, listen to this entire episode, figure out what it is that you need to learn, and share this with others that you know and love. And so with that, I am excited to have Sherry Fernandez with me. And as I told you, this is going to be a little bit of a blast from the past, but there's lessons that we're going to learn from that as well. And so with that, let's roll that episode with Sherry. All right, Sherry. Well, I'm just going to start we're going to laugh a lot during this. Is that okay?
That's good. I do that a lot.
Well, I thought it would be interesting. I know you've got, we want to talk a little bit about, because I know you've got a best-selling book that we want to talk about and some of the messages that you've been sharing with people for quite a while. But I thought it would be interesting because I think, a lot of times we go through life and we have these blasts from the past, or we were kind of joking beforehand, right? We kind of orbit in and orbit out of different people's lives. And so I thought it would be helpful just to kind of explain how we know each other, but yet we don't know each other. And so we're going to get to know each other a lot better today, right? So it's interesting because your assistant reached out to me, right?
Right.
Who I know, right? I think you're still in Boise.
Yeah,
right?
you're still in Boise, yeah.
Okay. So I lived there. I moved down to California almost 20 years ago now. Can't believe it's been that long.
That's all.
Holy
that long, huh?
smokes, right? But what's interesting is, I've known of you for a long time because you're the mother of friends that we had when I was living in Boise, right?
Yeah.
Dean and Summer, your daughter Summer. And what's interesting is your assistant now is also someone who I was friends with at that time, right? So what an interesting coincidence, wink, wink, even though there are no coincidences, right? That Angie reached out to me, because we've stayed friends on Facebook and everything else for a while, but excited to have you here. And I guess from that, right, is what do you take from that as well? The synchronicity and serendipity of the fact that 20 years later, here we are on a podcast together.
He said earlier we were talking about just so don't ever be a jerk. You never I find myself in these situations thinking, because I know that I was aware of you and I knew you were friends with my daughter and her husband. And I remember her mentioning you. I can't remember anything, but I think, did I have a conversation with him? I wonder how it went. I wonder what
I said. Any interaction that we had, I remember as being good, and kind of looking up to you and Ken as being some great people. I mean, obviously, I knew Summer. I mean, you did a great job raising her. She's
she's awesome, isn't she?
Amazing person. Amazing
she's an amazing person.
But it's like you said, right? It's kind of interesting how we know people, and then we kind of, people kind of rotate out of our life for whatever reason, right? No good, no bad, no whatever. It's just what it is. I moved to California. And so we didn't have the physical proximity, but yet we've always had some proximity, if you will, because of who we know. But I think it's important, like you said, it makes you, I know I did that I did an episode with one of the guys that I was friends with in grade school. Right. And so it's like, I remember we were friends for a while, and then I couldn't remember why we weren't friends anymore. And so the first time when we reconnected, I'm like, Joe, I didn't do anything. I wasn't like a jerk, right? Is there anything I need to apologize for? I don't remember it. And he's like, no, dude, it's fine. Right. I mean, it's, but that's an important life lesson as well, right? Is to just always, we never know, a lot of people burn bridges, they do things that are mean and spiteful, and those things will come back, to us.
That's true. Just it's just a good, just if we just lived our lives like we might have to work with that person somewhere in the future, or sometimes I get cranky with somebody, maybe somebody driving or something, and I'll think, yeah, but what if I know them? I can't honk. I might know who they are.
You're honking and they pull up next to
Yeah.
you and you're like, oh crap, it's so so.
Yeah.
Right?
Is that, yeah. So you got to be careful who you honk at, or make sure you don't know them first, or maybe I'll meet them later and see them in the grocery store face to face, and I don't know. Just better to be nice all the time.
Well, it is, and it's. I know that's one of the things that as we were talking a little bit beforehand, but maybe just kind of explain a little bit, because I know you've got a book out called Life Mastery, and we'll put links into it as well. But I mean, this is a book that you wrote. I'm not sure how long ago exactly, but I know it's had big success.
Yeah, it's had pretty good success. It's on the Wall Street Journal bestseller list, and USA Today, and then several categories in Amazon. And so that came out. We hit that list. It came out in May of 2021, and it hit the bestseller list in about the middle of July of 2021. And then it's had steady success. And I've done a lot of podcasts. I've done about, I think I told you earlier, about 100 podcasts. And we're just, that's why Angie's working with me, is we're working on another media tour that we're going to be doing more. It's real top performing podcasts in my genre. That's basically the idea. Mm-hmm. And so we've got some of those going on. And so that's what's happening. I still do mentoring one-on-one, but again, I can only do so many people, and I've got a lifestyle I protect too. We travel a lot. And so I only see, well, in theory, I don't see more than 4. In reality, I'm doing 6 right now. But because I think, they would be so fun to work with. I take on one more and one more. But anyway, so that's what I'm doing. And still speaking. I do some workshops and some things like that.
Well, so the topic, right? Life mastery. I mean, we're both towards on the later end of our lives, right? I mean, I'm
a little later than you are.
you're a few years later than me, but not that far, really. I mean, yeah. Anyway, but what's interesting, is I think as we all get to this midlife, right? I mean, realizing that I probably have fewer years left to live than I've already lived. I mean, I've got a number in my head of where I want to get to. And when I get there, I'm not quite exactly at midlife, but I'm pretty close, right? And I think it starts to make us kind of reflect, and I know you've probably gone through this too, is one of the reasons why you're doing what you're doing now, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe just kind of share with me what was it that kind of changed? What was it that kind of came up that made you kind of change that path that you had in your life to what you're doing now and to writing the book?
Actually, it was kind of a natural progression. I tell a lot about this in the book, how it happened. But Ken and I got married in our earlier 20s, and we had just been party people, and that's put it mildly. And so we had not amassed nothing, not an education, not any assets. We just got married, and we were just struggling to put food on the table for our little family. We had summer, and then we ended up with 6 children eventually, but we had two right soon after we were married. And so we're just, and we're not, and it's not looking good. We don't have a future. But we both wanted more. Then we just wanted big things in life. But I had to go to work to figure out how to do that. So both of us, I started reading the books. Ken had listened more to audios because he was working usually 2 jobs. I was doing daycare and he was doing 2 jobs, and we were still struggling. Just to give you some idea of how unqualified we were for life. But we started just really educating ourselves on what made people successful. And then over the years, as years went by, people would observe that we knew some things. They watched what we were doing and the progress we were making. So I was asked to speak here, or teach there, teach a class here. And then pretty soon I was speaking on different topics. And then I opened my own fitness business with a personal development side to it. So I could teach the things I was teaching as I spoke, and I would just work with people casually one-on-one. And then I started mentoring there. So it's a natural progression. I learned these things myself. I think this is a thing of life. You learn something, well, it doesn't have to be this, anything. You learn something, you practice it for a long time, and then you have an obligation to teach other people, I think, if you have mastered something. And so that's kind of how I actually got to this. I never intended to write a book, though. I just was a thought. I just would say, people would say, you should write a book. And I'd be like, no, I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher. I'm not a speaker. I'm not a writer, or I'm a speaker. I'm not a writer. But the reality was that I did this for years. I've been asked, and then it just, I had something to say, and I wasn't going, like you said, not getting any younger. And I wanted the information to be out for anybody who wanted it. The things I'd learned, that I worked so hard for decades to learn. I thought if I'd had some of these principles and some of this knowledge earlier, how much more successful. I mean, my life's been great, but how much more successful I might be able to have been. So anyway, that's how the book came about. And I still do all the mentoring and teaching. I don't need to do it. It doesn't come from any ego. It's not like it satisfies my ego. I don't have anything to prove. I just feel like I want to make a difference. And I don't do it for the money, obviously. It's just, I feel like I've got something that's valuable to people.
Well, and I think that's that's what's important, right? I mean, this whole, I wrote down learn, practice, and share, right? And that a lot of times in life, the reason I like to ask that question too is because, for some people, everybody's different. For some people, it's kind of like a flash of lightning, right? I mean, something happened that was, very, very powerful in their life, and they kind of wake up and go a completely different way, right? And I think we hear those stories a lot. I mean, I've had a lot of people on the podcast that were that way. But I think what's interesting, and when people are listening or watching and they're seeing these things, they're like, oh, well, I must not be very good because I'm not having these, flash of lightning kind of experiences that put me on my dharmic path, right? Because I think most of us experience just what you explained, right? I remember having little kids and struggling to put food on the table and going to school and working, going to school full time, working full time, trying to make ends meet, but as we go through and we learn and we practice, and then we start sharing that. And I think that's an important thing. All three of those are important. A lot of people learn. A lot of people read books. A lot of people listen to audios. A lot of people go to trainings. Not a lot of people practice.
Yeah.
And then the people who do practice, not very many of them actually share what they've learned with other people. And I think that's, and it's usually, like you said, for most of us, I think it's kind of like the Steve Jobs Stanford commencement speech, right? Where he's like, you can't ever put the dots together until you turn around and look backwards. Mm-hmm. But when you turn around and you look backwards, it's like, oh, that's why I had that job. Oh, that's why I was in that relationship. Oh, that's why I was. And I'm guessing you kind of see that from your life too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like, I think that life just naturally trains you for the next step, right? Mm-hmm. I can see now how this prepared me for this opportunity, and this prepared me for this opportunity. And so, yeah, you look back and say, well, that was interesting. And sometimes I know along my life, I've thought, oh, this is it, what I'm supposed to be doing. And then there was another level or another thing, above that. One thing about you talking about sharing and learning, one scenario you didn't mention is the people who learn and then they want to teach without the practice in between.
Oh, there's a lot of those.
There's a lot of those.
I read a book. Now I know what to do.
I know. Right? I took a course, and now I know. And I just say that because in my world, we network a lot, mostly to see who needs us and what difference we can make out there, and just to be involved. We can't make a difference if we don't know people, right? But we run into, it's died down a little bit, but for a while there, I was just, every time I would meet some young person, they were going to be a life coach. And I'd think, or not even necessarily young people, but people I had known previously. I knew that their lives are a wreck, but they were going to be, now they've taken a course, they're going to be a life coach. I mean, oh, okay. And
it's like all the people with psychological problems become psychiatrists, right?
Yes, right, exactly. Or the drug addict who's going to help other people, it's just, or I used to have people, and I had my fitness business, want to be a trainer. They come in and say, what do I need to do to become a trainer? I think if I could be a trainer, it'd help me lose this weight. It's like, you go lose the weight, get fit, then come back and we'll talk, because you got to practice it before you really can teach it. Because if you can't really teach something by precept. You have to have lived it and understood it, right? It'd be like teaching music by precept with never playing. It doesn't make any sense. You have to learn the precept, practice the precept, then you know it. You don't know it. You just have an outline until you actually do the thing, and then you know what it is, and then you can teach it.
Well, and that's why I've heard kind of the difference between, because in my life, I mean, I've spent my whole life pretty much in professional development on myself, but also professionally helping people, right, to develop themselves professionally. And one of the ways that I kind of look at it is understanding versus knowing as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think you put that well, where it's like I can read a book and I can understand the mechanics of how to swim, but I don't know how to swim until I actually get in the pool and I practice, right?
Yeah.
But you see that, like you said, I mean, how many 22-year-old life coaches are there? And it's like, are you kidding me? You're gonna go help somebody with their life. Have you ever had kids? No. Have you ever, gone through a divorce or a crazy relationship? No. Have you ever been bankrupt or had financial problems? No. How are you going to help people through that if you've never experienced it and gone through it yourself?
Right. At least some trials. Absolutely. Like, please don't read a book on swimming and then teach people to swim. You'll drown somebody for sure.
Unless you got really good insurance, right?
Yeah, unless you got really good insurance. Yeah, don't do it. It's so true. And so, I'm just, and this is, again, I can only coach so many people. This is not a plug for me, but I'd just say, if you're looking for a coach or a mentor, make sure it's somebody that you admire. Or joke around our house between Ken and I, you never want to hire a fat trainer, because we did that once a long time ago. Don't do that. Or a broke financial person, right? A financial advisor. You want to make sure that when you're looking at advice from somebody, it's somebody who's already been successful in that thing. Well, if you want a life coach, then you want to find somebody who's successful in life, right? You want somebody that you could say, this is a person I can respect and admire as a whole person in life. And so actually a real life coach should be pretty difficult to find, because they've got to live long enough. And like you said, some people know, but they're not willing to teach, right? They don't want to, not because there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody's got to choose, where they make a difference, and teaching is for everybody. But so I've struggled myself finding people that I would like to do more. I would like to have a coach right now. I just would like to find somebody that I want somebody who does what I do to teach me, to help me see. Because, you can also know something really well and not see how it applies to you. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're too close to it too.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Well, and that's one of the whole reasons for having mentors and coaches, right? Is because I talk a lot about unconscious biases and blind spots as well, right? Yeah. And it's like, we're too close to ourselves. And so we can never see our own blind spots. Why? Because they're blind spots, right? We're too close. We can't actually see it. But somebody standing behind us, somebody standing to the side of us can very quickly or easily say, oh, Sherry, why are you doing that? Or why are you choosing this? What do you mean? I'm not choosing that. Well, I'm sitting here looking at it, and it sure seems like you are, right? How much longer are you going to keep doing that? Oh, geez, I didn't even realize I was doing it. Right.
I would say everybody, I would say probably everybody I've ever worked with had some, and then we're talking bright, most people I work with are entrepreneurs or want to, or would like, or have that entrepreneur spirit. They've got a lot of ideas and things, but some things that I observe, in almost everybody's in one of these categories, they're in the habit. They used to want a certain thing. And maybe they even achieved that thing. Maybe I wanted to be a teacher or whatever, but no longer makes them happy, and they haven't realized they're so much in the habit of doing this one thing that they just are in the habit of wanting that. They haven't occurred that maybe that's not the right thing to do. Or it sounded like such a good idea when they started, but it really wasn't a good idea for them. Or they picked something because other people wanted them. It was sort of a cultural thing, and they chose it because my dad was a doctor. We always do medicine in our family, and they think they chose it themselves. But when they reflect back, it wasn't ever their decision. They did it because of other people's opinions. So I'd say everybody that I worked with is in one of those categories, and they would change, They just didn't see it that way. And once, so I listened and I listened and I listened, and finally hear them saying the same thing over and over again about maybe unhappiness with their job, or I really always wanted to do this. And they just mention it. And then I can start to feel like, okay, you keep telling me you want this, but you're doing this. Mm-hmm. So tell me about that. And they'll be like, I never thought of that. You know, and in some ways they're not bright. I mean, we all do that, right? We're all doing that. They're bright, intelligent people who are self-aware, but we all just do that. We make choices out of, for various reasons that we're not always aware of.
Well, and it's interesting, like you said, I mean, I've seen a lot too, where, you know, when we're little kids and we're playful and we kind of know what we want to do. And we're even a lot of times as teenagers, but there's something that kind of happens when we get to those teenage years that really starts to mold us or indoctrinate us into what we're supposed to do. Right. Because I remember that I you know, my formal education in college. Yeah. As a little kid, I'm not going to be an accountant or a CPA. Right. But that's what I got. Right. I went through that formal training. Now it's served me well in some ways, but do I love doing it? No. As a little kid, did I dream of wanting to do that?
No,
no way, right? No way.
Weren't you going to be an astronaut or something?
Yeah, you know, I was going to be a business owner, entrepreneur. Ever since I was like, I started reading Forbes magazine when I was 12 years old. You know, it's like I was playing Dungeons and Dragons and reading Forbes magazine, right? Go figure.
So why'd you end up choosing accounting then?
Well, so here's the interesting thing, right? Is I kind of fell into the trap of what most of us do. Like you said, right? A lot of these people that you talk to, where I was going to get a finance degree because I was going to buy and sell businesses, you know, the whole leverage buyout thing. That was my idea of what I was going to do. So I was going to get a finance degree so I could learn how to do that. Mm-hmm. But I had two brother-in-laws that got finance degrees and couldn't find a job. And so both of them said, no, don't get a finance degree, get an accounting degree, right? Because with that, at least you can always get a job, right? There's lots of jobs that are out there. And then we had one of our family friends who was a former partner at Arthur Andersen that I very much respected, and decided, hey, I want to kind of be like him. I like that. I like the lifestyle that he has. I really respect him. Another family friend was actually the dean of, or the chair of the accounting department there at Boise State, where I was going at the time. And so it was very easy for me, or seemed natural for me, to get an accounting degree, right? But again, it's not, and it served me well. It's helped me support my family and do some other things, but it's not what lights me up, right? And after having done it now for 30 years, there's certain things about it, or about auditing or risk management, I don't really want to talk about it anymore, right? It's kind of like, you know, you talking about with the book. I've got a lot of knowledge up here, and I've spent the last 10 years getting as much of it out, recorded, books, courses, other things, right? So I can share, but I don't have to be the one who keeps talking about it, right? And I think, like you said, sometimes we come to that point in our lives too, where something maybe served us well for 5 years or 10 years, but then there's a time for a change, right? And for a lot of us, I think it's hard to want to make that change, because, as you said, we've kind of gotten in the habit of going after a thing or doing a thing, and once something becomes a habit, sometimes it's hard for us to want to switch, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, it sounds like that you hear that from people all the time.
I do, because you're not going to come and sign up for me for mentoring or coaching if you don't want to make some changes, right? So it's the person who's like, okay, I need to sort this all out. If you're really not, you get comfortable, like you said, you're in this place and you don't know how to get out. You don't want to get out. It's uncomfortable. You're probably not going to go get coaching. It's if you're ready to make a change or move to the next level. That would be another reason somebody would do mentoring. Or maybe their business life is fine, but maybe they focus so much on business that they need some more balance in their life. And they're not getting their spiritual side, and their relationships and some of the other things are out of balance because they've put so much energy into their business. And I've had a client recently like that was in a little more in that category. Just wanted improve the whole picture and make sure that they were balanced.
Yeah, well, and I want to go there for a little while because again, you use that word balance, which is important. It's an important word for me, right? And especially the older that I've gotten. But the word that so many people throw out there, and again, why a lot of times people will go to coaches or mentors or read books like the one that you wrote is they want to be successful, right? And so let's kind of maybe talk about success versus the balance as well, because like you said, the world in general kind of puts out there what success means, right? But that's not necessarily what makes people happy. And
Mm-hmm.
even this last week, I've been thinking a lot about the word success versus satisfaction and how we're all driving for success, but what we really probably should be looking for more is the satisfaction and not the success, because usually success is packaged to us in a certain way and it's not what actually is going to make most people satisfied.
Yeah, I think I can put some language to that for you and maybe help you flesh that thought out a little bit. So, real success, that law of attraction thing? We talked about that a little bit earlier. So, what the real law of attraction is you become such a kind of person that success comes to because of who you are. So, when we work on outward things, getting the degree, getting the business, getting a certain amount of money, which is fine. But if we're not working on us as a person, we work on us. I like what Jim Rohn said is he said, well, I'm going to come back to that one in a second. But what we do is we work on us. So I work on my knowledge about my profession. I work on who I am as a human being. I work on my character. I work on my spirituality. I work on my relationships. I'm doing all these. There's really no real balance. It's really more about who we're becoming as a whole person. And one other thing I was going to say about Jim Rohn, he said, formal education can make you a living. Self-education can make you a fortune. And what he's talking about is not just in that business, but just as a person, who you're becoming. That's what success is. And you talk about satisfaction. When we internalize, let me how I can say this another way. If I'm always working on me, like I talk with my clients, one of the first things I do, we work on is personal habits. And they all get this, even though you can't, they understand it. When I try to explain it, no, I get that. Somehow working on your physical fitness is going to affect your bottom line. Somehow working on your relationships is going to affect your bottom line. Somehow working on your education, your character, all those things combined. So I have these daily habits of, I'm just saying everybody should have some daily habits that are making me a certain kind of person. And along the way, I'm going to see this success. And then I apply the laws of my thing I'm working on, the finances or the business or whatever, the fitness principles. But as I apply those principles, I'm becoming a certain kind of person, and then I will find the success I'm looking for. But if you just look for the success without working on me, it's empty. You see the difference? So this is, rather than this outward focus, I'm going to do these things. I'm going to work on me, and these things will come as I work on them. I'm still focused on them. I still work towards them, but my main project is me. And the main reason to do any of it is because of who we're becoming. Jim Rohn also said, make $1 million, not necessarily for the money, although that's good too, but for what it will make of you. If I'm becoming a certain kind of person as I grow my business, or if I work on my finances, I'm becoming something different. Does that make sense? And we're our own masterpiece. So that's satisfying life. That's a whole life. That's a balanced whole person, not just a person who did well in business.
Well, like you said too, I mean, we are the creator, right? And like you said, I mean, it takes a certain kind of person to make $1 million. Mm-hmm. But you can only make $1 million if you're that kind of person who can make $1 million, right?
Well, you could make $1 million other ways, but not in a way that would be satisfying, right? Right. You could steal it. You could cheat somebody. You could walk over the top of people, but that would not be satisfying, right? You make $1 million with your own efforts, in your own educating yourself and doing the things, becoming the person who knows how to make $1 million, and then you've got something.
Well, and I think what's interesting too is like you said, this is probably where the balance comes in more too, right? Is like I said, usually when I hear the word success, most people are talking about monetary success, right? How much you got in your bank account is what most people in the world determine if you're successful or
Right.
not.
That's the way we
Right?
talk
That's the
that's
way
the way
we
we
talk all
talk.
the
And
time.
yeah, it's the way we
You got
talk.
to you got to
Even
take
if
this
success,
course, and I'll make you $1,000,000. I'll show you how
you'll
to
be a
make a million
success.
dollars, and then you're successful, right?
Yeah, then you'll be successful. The key to
But
success, my
yeah,
program.
is make him buy my program and have lots of money, right? But I don't know if you're like me, but a lot of times the people who the world would say are successful, right? They have lots of money, and I've worked for people who are billionaires, right? But the money doesn't necessarily, yeah, they're successful monetarily, but usually there's something else in their life that they're not a complete or balanced person, right?
And if you watch the trajectory of a person like that, um, especially if they've not done it in ethical ways, but even if they're not taking care of the whole person, they're successful often for a moment, and maybe a long moment. If you watch their whole entire life from beginning, to the end, usually they tend to lose it. Just simple example could be poor relationships, and you can end up with divorces and kids and things, and you're dividing all your money, and then you have less or what, then that's kind of an obvious, easy example. But if you watch people who are successful and totally unbalanced, and you observe where they're going, often they're headed for problems.
Hmm. Well, like you said, what's interesting is, because I think a lot of times, and I'm guilty of this, at different points in my life, right? Because that's the other thing, probably for everybody listening, right? There's different points in our
Mm-hmm.
life when we have everything together better than we do other times. And that's just part of life, is kind of the
Yeah.
recalibration. But, like you said, there's working on your physical health has something to do with success in other areas in your
Mm-hmm.
life. Working on your relationships has something to do with the other parts of your life, right? And so much of the time, I think
Yeah.
we get so myopic in, for example, somebody who wants to earn lots of money, and I'm going to work, 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 right? And I'm going to focus all of my energy and attention on doing that. And yep, I made $10 million last year. Woohoo! Right? I accomplished it. I was very focused. I did it. But along the way, at the end of the time, like you said, they find out that, well, now their partner wants a divorce. Their kids won't talk to them. They're overweight. They just had a heart attack,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah.
you see these things kind of cropping up all the time when we're not balancing in some of these other areas in our life, right?
I
Or like
got
you said, it's the
yeah.
person that goes to the gym all the time, and they're ripped, man. I mean,
Yeah.
Mr. Universe, Miss America, whatever, but they don't have a relationship, or they don't have any money, to go along with it. And so there's something kind of still lacking in their life.
Yeah, still lacking there. Two stories I want to tell you. First of all, as I used to teach this thing when I was start speaking on this, I just have three parts of life. It was, I think, physical, spiritual, emotional, or something like that. I put these three circles up on the board, and then I kind of overlap, and I put a push pin through them. When you affect one, you affect all three. Like, that was my thing. But then I realized at some point, I always felt uneasy about that. There's something missing to this. And then as I realized there's a lot more areas, more parts of life than just three. There's eight, and that's why I talk about all eight in the book. And also, that doesn't just affect them a little bit, it affects them thoroughly. So now I take all those eight areas, stack them right on top of each other, and put a pin right through the middle. I tell this in the book, because when we affect one thing, we are going to affect, we're not segmented things, we're one whole person. These are parts that intertwine with each other. So my story is this. So I was speaking at a group of entrepreneurs. There's probably about 70 or 80 people, maybe more, at this networking event I was speaking. I spoke for about 45 minutes there. And I was speaking on, the first thing I asked them was, how many of them thought, I wasn't sure how this was going to go. I said, how many of you think that if you were physically fit, you were fit, ripping good fit, it would affect your bottom line, you'd be more successful in your business? Absolutely every hand went up. Every hand went up. They all believe that you can't, it's hard to, like one of my clients said this week, you can't draw a line from here to there, but you know that it's true. You just know instinctively that that's going to be true. And then we talked about some ways you can be fit, some things to do, how to get into your program, how to get a program into your busy lives, because you're all entrepreneurs. then afterwards, people literally, Jason, lined up to tell me why they couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
All one of three things. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. My ankle hurts. My knee hurts. My something hurts. And I was so discouraged. I sort of slid out. I thought, because this is how it rolls, right? Because they looked around that room. We were not a bunch of good people by any means. Even they all knew they would be more successful. They were there to be successful because they were entrepreneurs at a networking event, training. But they all had, but so many had an excuse for not doing it. And so that's where we're at. I don't know how to fix that problem, but that's where we're at. And the attitudes that we have, we know it and we don't do it anyway. Even something so important as your business.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because, I like to kind of put a couple of quotes together. So one of my favorite quotes is Woody Allen, right? 80% of life is showing up. Hey, all you got to do is show up, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is, right, is that probably 90% of the people don't show up. And those that actually do show up, like you said, most people end up coming up with excuses or other things like that for why they can't do it. I mean, I see this all the time. Same thing, same experience that you just had, with
in
people
all areas of life, right?
Yeah. I mean, I was just messaging this guy on LinkedIn today, and it's like for an executive program that would help him. But he's telling me again how he falls asleep on the couch and wakes up the next day in the same clothes, and he's working 10 to 12 hours a day, and he's looking for another job. And it's like, dude, do you not see what's going on here?
Yeah.
Do you not see this?
Yeah.
Right. But,
that's the person who's really out of control. He does not have life mastery.
No, they don't have life mastery. Right. And again, it's like, well, why are you pushing yourself so hard at a job when you're looking for another job anyway? Right. It's like, to me, that was like, why are you, if you're already one foot out the door, why do you continue to give so much of your life to this job that you're leaving anyway? Right.
But if you have to work that many hours, something you're not very good at what you do. Something is not right.
Something is not
One
right.
of the things, just to share another side story, is this came up actually on a Facebook post. And my daughter chimed in, so I thought it was worth repeating. But somebody had said, I think probably you would know, you and I would probably both know. He said, he's got his own business. He said, I go home at the end of the day and be with my family. I just do that. And I mentioned that my husband, because my dad always said the reason that Ken was successful, we've been entrepreneurs since the 80s, very successful business. The reason he's successful is because at the end of the day, he goes home. He would be home at 6 o'clock. He wanted to be home with me and his children. That's just how he rolls. So I made that comment. And then my daughter, one of my daughters, not some, my other daughter, said, I remember Dad never missed a game or a track meet or dance recital. He did sleep through a few dance recitals, I will say.
Hey, we all
but
have.
Not when our kids dance. But that's a balance. That was a good demonstration. I think he's a good example of somebody he's a very successful businessman. His business is very successful. When he went to work, he worked really hard. He worked hard all day. But then when he came home, he left work and he went home. I just think he's a good example of how it's to be done. And when it was time to be at home, he was at home. When it was time to be at church, he was at church. When it was time to be at the gym, he was at the gym. He just did the things that needed to be done. And it proved to be successful. And he didn't have to pay a big price in his health or in his relationships that way. And he still had he used to say sometimes to me, I could probably make a lot more money if I worked harder, but I don't know. He made plenty of money. And I don't even know if that was true.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because like you said, I mean, we all ultimately have to choose and kind of quit making excuses, right?
Yeah.
Because Ken could have made the excuse, again of, well, I got to work longer and I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to make it because I'm, especially as a man, a lot of times we're just trying to do everything we can to provide and support our families. And so it's very easy for us to justify working the extra hours, doing the other things, because it's like, hey, I'm doing it for you guys, right? So you can go take nice vacations together, right? But the family on the other side is like, yeah, but Dad, we'd rather not have as nice of a vacation and have you here or have you at our dance recitals or whatever it happens to be, right?
And let's be honest too, there's some ego feed in being at work longer. And you're always going to get the strokes at home that you're going to get at work. And also it's, if you don't work smart, you end up having to work longer. There's a lot of this is within somebody's control, or maybe I feel important because I say I work these extra hours. The ego can get in there and wreak some havoc too.
Yeah.
I know a lot of men stay longer at work just because they like it or they like being important. You go home and you're just dad, right? Or mom. And
Yeah,
then at
no, I
work, you
know
get
that.
to
I
be
know that.
somebody
I know
important.
that. I know
The other
that.
thing too is I think that that's a symptom of a life that where someone does not have mastery over their life is they're putting out fires all the time. It makes you feel important when you're out putting out fires. But if you have your life is your days are planned, you got your goals set, you know what your priorities are. You don't find yourself running around putting out fires. But it feels important, right? You feel like you're busy, you're doing things, you're answering emails and you're answering texts and you're running around here and you're solving these problems. But that's also a life that's out of balance. You have your what Brian Tracy says, eat your frogs. You have your frogs every day that you need to eat, and you stay focused on those, and you don't let people rob you of that or your time doing the things you know are important by answering their emails and their problems and things and being at their beck and call. That takes discipline because it feeds our ego to pick up, to answer the text and to answer the email and to be important there. And it takes some self-discipline to put the phone aside, not touch it, and go to work and put your head down and go to work.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to come back to kind of this, that whole idea that you came up with these 8 areas of life, and so you take the circles, you put them all together, you put the push pin through it, right? And I look at that as an analogy that we can think about. And like you said, everybody, we all know that this is true. And if you even look at our body, right, we've got different systems in our body. We've got our circulatory system, our gastro system, our skeletal muscular system, all these different things, right, that are going on in our body that have to work together. Right. And one, if you're having gastro problems, it's going to end up affecting some of the other things in
Yeah.
your life. Right. I mean, we know this, like you said, I mean, everybody, we know this, but we just make excuses for it. And one of the excuses that I can see a lot of people coming back with, again, it's usually time and it's usually money.
Yeah.
And it's
Time, money, or
usually,
injury.
yeah, and it's usually time more than it really is even money, right? Because I mean, we can all, if it's important enough to you, you'll find the money to do whatever it is that you want to do. But I wanted to come to this area back to this because we're talking about balance too, and kind of how your take on this is, right? Is we know we've got these different areas of our life, but we also know that that word balance to us usually means evenly scaled, right? Like if I'm going to be a good dad, I need to spend 8 hours with my family and 8 hours at work and oh, just a minute, there's my 24 hours, right, in the day. How do because it never ends up being equal, right? Like again, if I'm working on
No.
my body, I don't have 4 or 5 hours. I mean, I could make 4 or 5 hours in the day to go to the gym for that long. Now, if I'm an actor or something like that, where my physical appearance is a part of my job, right? Then I'm obviously going to have to make the time to do that. But for most people, it's not. And so, how do you deal with this idea of balancing and knowing when you have it right?
First of
Because
all,
yeah,
I'd say balancing and having it right. It's two analogies that work really good for that. Is they say when is a tightrope walker balancing? When do they have to correct their balance? It's constant, right? They're on this like all the time. They're never perfectly balanced. They're back and forth. Or an airplane, when is it on course? It's always having to do course corrections, right? So that's how we live our lives. We have to make balance all the time. But balance isn't equal amounts of time for each thing. Different things require different amounts of time. You don't have enough time. You have to work. Most of us have to work most of you guys. I don't have to.
yeah, not you.
Not me. I
Yeah,
have to
dig
work
it,
about eight
dig it
hours a
in.
day, right? I mean, you're going to have to do that. And you have to sleep 8 hours. So then we have to take the other 8 hours and decide what's important out of there. Our family doesn't read it. They get tired of us that we spend 8 hours every day with them. They'll be like, go to work, but they do need some of our time. They need some dinner time, some conversation. The spouse needs some time, alone time at the end of the day. So you have to find some of that 8 hours for that. You have to take care of your physical self, and you have to do your own self-development. You have to spend time which I recommend in the morning, and calling and making that time inviolate. Time thinking, reading, working out, praying, meditating, whatever things that are important for you for your own development, you have to have time for that. So that requires planning. And this is where and then sticking to your plan, which requires discipline. But your life, that's life mastery. You plan your day so that in the morning you get up in time to do the things that you need to do for you. And nobody interrupts that time. That's for you. Then you have your daytime, which is your work time, your vocation time, the time you go to work and make a living and make a difference, hopefully at the same time. And then in the evening, you have your relationship time. But if you don't plan it, spend some of that day, every day planning it, it will be robbed from you. Someone will interrupt, they'll steal from you your bits of time, not because they're mean, because that's just how people are, or things, or even our own distractions will rob us of what's really important. So the bottom line is we need to develop good personal habits. And one of those habits needs to be to plan our day and stick to our plan and not let our own mind, our habits with our phone or other people steal our plan away from us. And that you've seen the sense of control that make you feel like a person who's doing those things. You feel mastery, you feel control. Doesn't mean it goes perfect. Of course not. During your day, there's are going to be things that have to happen that have to be taken care of. And you might not get to do all your whole to-do class list. In fact, in my workshops, I tell people everything's never done. You never can do everything on your list. There's always more to do than you can do. So you can't just work down a list. You've got to work on the top priority things. And the bottom ones will go away, right? Because you can't do it all in a day. Get everything done. So anyway, that's a life that's got balance and mastery. And is it going to be perfect? Again, it's not going to be perfect, but you're striving for that kind of work, life, personal care balance.
Yeah, well, it kind of reminds me, two different things because, I know from a financial freedom perspective, right? One of the habits that we should have is saving, right?
Sure.
And so typically, I've always been taught you that's the first thing you do. You move to savings, whatever you've said that you're planned that you're going to move to savings. Why? Because if you don't, at the end of the month, there won't be the money left to move to savings, right? So it's taking care of that first, or taking care of ourselves first. That oxygen mask, dropping down, put it on yourself first. But it seems like so much of the time we leave ourselves until the last. And like you said, it kind of, as you were talking too about the planning and the habits, it reminds me of Stephen Covey talking about the big rocks. It's like you got to plan, you got to take those big rocks, you plan those first, and then you let the other stuff that's not really that important fall in around it. But if you don't plan it, if you don't have the habits of sticking to it, right, it just goes away. It's like the money that's never there at the end of the month for you to put into your savings.
And one of those big rocks is that you do take care of yourself. Not put yourself last. I don't have very much tolerance for that because in my experience, people who are doing that, they're out of control. And they're not doing that. They're doing that as a lack of discipline than anything else. We have to discipline ourselves to take care of us first. And not doing that is you don't get any big points for that, neglecting yourself, because you do that and then somebody else has to pick up the pieces, right? I'm on a Jim Rohn roll, but he also said, you take care of you for me and I'll take care of me for you. You take care of yourself, you fill your cup, and then you have something to offer. I remember seeing this woman, a little younger than me, with her parents at a restaurant once, and she had to take them, and they were very overweight. They were about my age. She was probably late 40s or 50. And they were both very overweight. She had to help them to the bathroom, help them out. And I thought, that's an example. They're robbing her life. They're stealing her life away from her because they didn't take care of themselves, right? That's not right. And to some level, things are still going to happen, but we take care of us, and then we've got something to offer the world. And we can offer to our spouse and to our work and to our everything else. It's one reason why that fitness thing affects our bottom line.
Yeah. Well, because by doing that, it helps to build in that discipline.
It does. Right? It builds a discipline. And also this body is the instrument that we serve with, that we work with, that we think through, that we love with. If this body is our instrument, and if you were surgeon, you want the very best instruments, right? And they're all tuned up. If you are a car mechanic, you want your very best instruments. We want this instrument to be as sharp and effective as possible.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
my. Yeah, no, it's all, you know, and I think most of the time, you know, most of us, we just kind of go along with life. We just kind of
yeah,
let life kind of take us where it's going, you know, but really to be successful, to feel satisfied, to feel happy, you know, without that discipline, it's hard to have that,
yeah.
right?
That discipline is the number one thing. Without that, you're not going to be happy if you feel like your life is out of control. That's why I call the book Life Mastery. If you have mastery over your life, that doesn't mean that everything's perfect, but you know, like when my clients get a fitness program going, then they quit thinking about that. They know it's going to happen for them. We work with it on lifetime habits. Then they feel mastery over that thing, and they can move on to another thing. It isn't that they have arrived, because we never really arrived to any of these things, but they feel like they've got control and mastery over it. Or when you start planning your days and your time, then you feel like you have mastery over it. It's not perfect, but you feel some sense of control. Is that out of control feeling is a lack of discipline.
Well, and I think that's a great way to kind of summarize up, right? Is that the mastery is feeling in control, right? And again, we can't control everything, but so many people in their life feel stuck, they feel out of control, they feel like they're getting acted upon instead of them being the
Yeah,
creator
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
the actor, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And how much of that then is it's because of a lack of discipline, it's because of a lack of planning, it's a lack of having the habits, right, that you need to have in place to be able to help you get out of life what it is that you want to get. And I thought, you know, again, it's just a different way of kind of saying it, of, you know, most people focusing on themselves last. But the way you said it, I thought is kind of interesting because, you know, I'll take care of me for you, you take care of you for me, right? Because if I'm taking care of myself, then I have something to give.
Right.
But the flip side of it that I think a lot of times, you know, especially as parents, you know, women especially, I see this a lot from women because there's the self-sacrificing mother kind of you know, idea that so many people have, that you're a bad mother unless you're taking care of everybody else and ignoring yourself. But I thought it was interesting that it's actually irresponsible to not take care of yourself, right?
Yeah.
Because if I don't take care of myself, then it means somebody else has to take care of me.
That
And
is selfish.
I'm not, that's selfish. I'm not
Yeah.
being responsible at that point if I'm doing that, right? And so actually the more responsible thing to do is to take care of yourself, to have these habits, to be disciplined and do those things so that you have something to give other people and other people don't have to then take care of you.
Right. And if I could share one additional, which is my favorite concept right there, but also I have a lot of women who were mothers come to the gym and talk to me. They have to say the time thing. I'm so busy taking care of my kids. And I would say, if your daughter was taking care of herself when she's your age, but you're taking care of yourself, how would you feel about that? She said, I'd be appalled. You know, how's she going to learn how to take care of herself? Your daughter or your son, how do they do it? They're going to watch how you do it. And that's how we can run around finding our children's shoes and their socks and their lunches and stuff, or we can teach them how to live. Right. And how do they learn how to live? They watch you live. One wise man said, my father never taught me how to live. He just lived and let me watch him do it. Now, that doesn't mean we don't train and teach our children, but they're learning from us. And I guarantee you, when I tell those moms or I ask them about their own daughters doing what they're doing to themselves, it hurts their soul. They do not want that to happen, right? Because they love those kids. And then I might mention to them they have a God in heaven that loves them too and feels the same way about
Right.
neglecting you. And I'll be quiet. I mean, I know that it sounds almost mean-spirited about this, but honestly, it's lazy. It's easier to go around and be important again with just like the office of the emails, the finding the things my kids need, taking care of all their little needs instead of taking care of me is really lazy. It's easier to do that than to discipline myself And I had 6 kids, and I've been on all sides of this. So, I mean, it's like I haven't been there. Right? I had 6 kids, and they all lived. They all made it through. And I made I did what I'm telling you. I made sure that I took care of myself, and that has paid off. My kids, my girls, I've got 4 daughters, and they all take good care of themselves. And I'm proud of that. I think they learned that from me.
Yeah.
I hope they
Well,
do.
and I love that. Just live your life and let those watch you live,
Mm-hmm.
because it doesn't matter what you say; it matters what you do.
No, it
At the
doesn't
end of
matter
the
what you
day.
say, and they already know what you think. So there's no point in lecturing them.
Yeah.
And they'll know more about what you think if they watch the way you live. They'll have a lot better idea of what you find important, and you're teaching them what's important.
Good stuff, Sherry. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me on, Jason. It's fun, and I was getting really pointed. I don't know if we ever had much for conversations before, but we now know each other a lot better than we did back then, I guess.
Well, we do, and that's why, like I said, when Angie reached out, it's like, oh yeah, I want to talk to Sherry. Are you kidding me? Yeah, I want to talk to her.
Yeah, I mean, we're friends on Facebook. I've seen you on Facebook, and your some stuff. I didn't really pay too much attention at the time, so I need to pay more attention next time I see something pop up.
Every so often, I say something that's worthy.
So I knew exactly what she was talking about when she brought it up. So I was really pleased to do it.
Well, and it's, I appreciate it. I mean, like you said, my whole life, I've been on a similar path as you of, professional development. I mean, Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, Stephen Covey. I mean, have been consuming this stuff since I was literally probably about 11 years old. Right. I had my first Franklin planner, I think, when I was 11 or 12. Right. I mean, I'm a nerd. Right.
Yeah.
but even still, and teaching and coaching people, as we were talking about earlier on, I have my own blind spots. There's things that I need to be reminded again about as well. And so I appreciate, the opportunity that we had to talk today too, because it's not just, other people listening, but I got a lot out of this as well. And I got a little kick in the butt about some of the areas in my life where I'm not as disciplined as I should be. I have been in the past, right? But life happens, the tightrope happens. And sometimes, we kind of lose some of where we had been. So it's just a good reminder for me that I know there's a few places in my life where I needed to hear what you said today too. So thank you.
Well, one wise man said, we'll never see a time when we won't need to be taught, right? So we all need to be taught all the time. And also in Life Mastery, if you pick that up and read it, you will find a section on tracking sheets. That thing you said about how you kind of lose some of where you were. If you get in the habit of doing the tracking sheets where you track your daily habits, like it's a lifetime habit, that gets you back on track really quick if you do get off track at all. And it's the number one skill I teach my clients. It's a simple little method, but you do that's the way to develop habits. And that's probably my signature thing that I teach people. And I've had clients years later come back and they're still using the tracking sheets, and they still order them sometimes from me. And they're free. They're free on the website, by the way. anybody would like some. They're also a workbook on Amazon, but that's like
and where's the best place? Where's that website that they can go out to?
lifemasteryinfo.com, and it's a download. And then also the book's on Audible. It's on Audible, as well as other platforms, but I don't know if anybody uses any others besides Audible. So it's on Audible, and then there's both hard copies and paperback, and it's also available as an ebook on Kindle and whatever. So it's out there, really accessible, and I'm really available. People can contact me if they've got questions or concerns. An email, I answer all my emails myself. So if Amy wants to email me if any questions, or if they want to be indignant about some of the things I said, go ahead, send me an email. I can take it.
You can take it. You got thick skin. Well, thank you. And we'll make sure and put all this information in the show notes too, so that people can reach out. But yeah, any final thoughts before we wrap for today that we didn't get to that we should have?
Well, I'm often asked what one message I have, one message to leave, and so I kind of leave that message.
Of course you can. I wouldn't ask you and then take it away from you.
It's just a little one, but we talk a lot about, there's been a lot of angst over the last few years. We had the lot of political angst and the Black Life Matters. And we had this stuff about COVID and should you wear a mask or not, get a vaccine, not get a vaccine, lots of anger and things. We also have lots of concerns with our relationships and our marriages and our work and whatever we have going on out there. Maybe we passed over, not treated well at work, whatever it is that's out there that you'd like to fix, it comes down to fixing us first. That's the way we fix everything. Our relationships, if our relationship isn't right, we work on us. We don't worry about how the other person's not changing. If we want to see things better socially, well, let's work on us. That's the only thing that we really have any control over. And the only thing that we really can fix is just us. But if we do that, everything is, Mahatma Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. That's what he means. Go out and change you, and then it'll be something. It'll change the world. It'll make the difference that you want to make. Doesn't mean you don't get involved, but work on this person. And
and
that changes everything.
Yeah, because as you were talking about that quote is on one of the magnets on my refrigerator, right? It's one of my favorite magnets.
It's a good one.
But also I was just listening or just went back and watched the Hobbit movies as well, right? So and there's a quote in there, pretty much kind of similar to Gandhi-ish, that the real change in the world happens because of the ordinary folk, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that, if you want to do big changes to the world, change yourself, right? Work on you, do the things that you can do to control yourself, to discipline yourself. Other people will see that, right? And the love that you share and who you are becoming will be an example to the rest of the world. And that has a much, much bigger impact on the world around you than all the talking that you can do in the world.
That's absolutely true.
Because
it has a ripple effect.
It has a ripple effect, and people will follow the people that they admire and respect and that they see are getting the results, right? Gandhi was that kind of a leader. Yeah, he spoke sometimes, but people followed him because of his example and what he was doing and who he was being.
That's right. So true. And so when he did speak, people listened because they knew he was authentic. So if you spent the 2 hours you could have spent marching at the Capitol building over something, if you spent that 2 hours working on you, been a much better use of time. We don't change the world by stomping our feet and demanding change. It just doesn't work. It's too easy to. It's the same lazy thing, Yeah. It's thinking you're making a difference when you're really not.
Yep.
So we're on the same page on that, Jason, and good message to get out there. It does take discipline and in life mastery. There's some tools there to help people develop those. It's not easy. Disciplines come little at a time. They're like a muscle, but there's some tools in life mastery that I think I'm proud of life mastery and the fact that it has tools in it that I looked for that I couldn't find. I read all of the masters of motivation, but they never told me how to start. Give me a place to start. What can I do right now today? And life mastery does provide that in part 3. So I'm proud of that.
Well, and it's good because that goes back to one of the things that we talked about before, the learn, practice, and share, right? A lot of times, again, in self-development, you learn, people motivate you, they get you excited, but like you said, a lot of times the practices are missing. So I'm glad that you put those in your book so people can actually start practicing it. And then as they practice it, they do it, they can then share with other people as well, because that's how the whole loop goes. Yes. Right.
And I promise you, I did not put anything in there I thought was just a good idea. I didn't try to teach anybody to swim by just reading a book. Everything that's in there, I practiced and taught for a lifetime. And it's from my own experience. I know it to be true, and useful. So I didn't just come up with a good idea and research it. I am the research.
You are the research. Well, eating your own dog food.
Yeah.
That's what we say in startup companies, right? You're eating your own dog food.
Eat your own dog food. Okay.
Anyway. Well, Sherry, thank you. And thank you for spreading the message that you are in the world too, because again, it's one of these things that people need to hear. They need the practical stuff to be able to help them. And I'm grateful that we got to reconnect and grateful for what you shared today.
And thank you. And the podcasters, you guys, I said I've done about 100 and almost universally you're people who are trying to make a difference. And I really have admired that. Somebody asked me if I wanted to do it. Twice I've been asked. I'm like, no way. I don't want to do that. But everyone, I just almost without exception, every podcaster or radio, there's some more radio shows and some things, but they're just people trying to make a difference. And so good for you. Good for sticking your neck out and trying to make a difference, because I know it's got to be a lot of work and probably not a lot of rewards that you can see, but that it makes a difference. I think it's another voice out there, positivity.
Well, it's another voice out there, but it also, as I said, it's the ordinary people doing extraordinary things,
Yeah.
and we will never know the full impact
No,
because
not in this life.
we just don't hear, right? And I do. Sometimes people will reach out to me and will share with me, but yeah, you just have to just be disciplined, put your head down, just keep doing what you're doing,
Yeah.
be who you are, and realize that you are making an impact in the world, even if you don't see it directly.
Yeah. That's what we all need to do. Just go to work, put our head down, stop worrying about what's going on around us. Just put our head down, go to work, make the difference we know how to make, and just a little bit of a shotgun kind of thing.
Out we go.
But it
Out
does.
we go.
We won't know. And it's better that we don't know, because it just would just feed our ego. So it's probably better that we don't know. It's better that we do it without knowing what difference we make. So good luck, Jason. If I can do something for you, let me know. Did Angie send you a copy of the book?
No, but
Okay. I'll have her send you one. How's that?
That's something that works too.
All right. I'll have her send you one. I'll have her reach out and send you a copy of the book.
All right. Well, thanks.
Right, good luck.
Thanks, Sherry. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. And bye.